Hello, everybody. Keaton Gillogly with you, and today we get a chance to talk to the Director of Player Development for the Seattle Mariners, Andy McKay. Andy, how we doing?
Great, Keaton. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Enjoying the time with some family. Enjoying the time talking to a lot of the Nuts alums who have been out doing some great things over the last couple of years. So, how have you been spending this time? How's the quarantine routine been for you?
I can't complain. My biggest issue is just being stuck at home. That in comparison to what a lot of people are dealing with, obviously there's no reason for me to complain. But I do have a fair routine created where usually by 8 o'clock or so, I'm back in my home office where I am now, and I'm back here most of the day, doing a lot of Microsoft Teams meetings, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of phone calls. We've got quite a few different projects going on, and then just your basic communication of texting and phone calls with staff and players. So I've been shocked at how busy I've been and how quickly the day goes by. And both my kids are home. My daughter's a senior in high school, and my son's a junior in college. And they get up and they go to work. I go to work, and we all meet up in the evenings.
So what has some of the conversation been like with some of your staff and players? I mean, what are some of their beyond the life concerns, but we're talking about baseball concerns. What are some of the baseball concerns they're bringing to you on a day-to-day basis?
I think everybody is focused on the same thing, which is how do we continue to keep our players engaged and moving forward without any real light at the end of the tunnel and without any real information. And so you're preparing for an unknown. And I mean, obviously we can all, look online and see that there seems to be some momentum moving forward for return to play for the major league group. But what does that mean for minor league baseball and all of these players involved? So that's a big focus. And, we're in contact with our guys constantly. We understand who has access to what. We understand who has access to a gym, who's doing workouts in their basement, who's got a batting cage, and they're all dealing with different realities. So, we have players that have mounds built in their backyard or a batting cage in their backyard, and we have players that are really hurting to find facilities to get to because high schools and colleges are closed as well, which is where they usually spend their time in the off season. So it's a challenge, and but we've done a good job of staying on top of it and providing as much instruction as we can, remotely.
So is that something you're going to take into account whenever minor league players get an opportunity to start playing games again? Are you going to be able to take into account what they were able to do when it comes to their performance on the field once we do get back playing?
Absolutely. And that was one of our initial projects, was to really accurately assess what each player was going to have access to. And so that when we do show up and we start doing our workouts and, spring training 2.0 or whatever it's going to be called, that we have an understanding that, player X hasn't done a whole lot for the last 2.5 months. And that we need to begin, building him up differently than we would, say a Jared Kelnick, who has access to a really spectacular indoor facility where he hasn't missed much at all throughout this. So they're all coming from different places, and that's okay. Our directive from day one is to stay safe and follow the law. So I think we've got a pretty good beat on where our guys are individually.
Let's go back to spring training. And, I've had a lot of the guys be able to tell us the story of the day baseball shut down, but you or Jerry were the one who told them. So from your perspective, where were you when you realized you guys were going to have to leave the facility and baseball was not going to be starting on time?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a blur now. It's kind of I guess probably a 2 or 3 day haze, I think, of I remember we were playing a game and you started hearing things about what was going on in the NBA that night. And we got rain, so the game was halted. And I think by the time we walked off the field and got back into the clubhouse and in my office, you understood things were starting to change quickly. And that was the last time we were on the field. And I think over the next couple of days, we were trying to assess and get different pieces of information. And But I do remember how quickly it changed because we had players on airplanes flying in, minor league players for spring training, and literally turned around and went home. Because that was the day when, we brought everybody into the cafeteria to discuss what was going on. And before we even got into what we had planned on saying, we got news that everybody was going home. So it was quick. It was a blur. It was changing constantly. And, it was scary because you didn't know, none of us knew at the time what was happening. And we had, you were hearing different things from all over the place, and you were hearing, some of our elected officials didn't think it was a big deal. Others thought it was going to be crazy. And then, it turned out to be both of those realities in different places throughout the country. So, yeah, that was my recollection of it.
All right, well, let's get into some of the fun stuff and some of the positives. I want to talk about Jose Umbria. Rob Marcello got a lot of conversations about him last year. He was your minor league staffer in 2019, but Umbria was your minor league staffer in 2018 after that year in Clinton. And I got a chance to watch him work, as did Nuts Nation, throughout last year. What makes Jose Umbria such an effective coach?
There's a lot of things, but I think it mostly just begins with the care and attention that he provides for our players. And I think like all really impactful coaches, if he's got 12 hitters in Modesto, he's adopting 12 kids to be his son. And, he's providing that constant training, both from on the field, but off the field. He's training the whole person, how to be a professional, how to hit, how to train, how to prepare, and most importantly, how to be a good person. And he's one of those people that it's just impossible not to like, because he's so genuine, and you can just see immediately in everything he does how much he cares for everybody that he works with, and it's infectious. So it's been great.
Get the phone charged up there?
I am. I got some issues going on here.
No, you're good. Take your time.
We're back in. We're hooked
up. Well, I want to go back kind of a ways here. You got to play with Jerry Weinstein, who managed the Nuts. I got to know him a little bit in Modesto as well. First of all, going back to your playing days, what position did you play?
First base.
Oh, and what do you remember about about Jerry Weinstein and playing for him those first couple of years at Sacramento City College?
Yeah, and it goes back before then. I was playing in an American Legion program that was coached by one of the assistants at City College for Jerry. So, and even before then, starting when I was in 8th grade, of going to Jerry's baseball camp. So, again, it's a difficult scenario to explain because things have changed so greatly. This was pre-cell phone, pre-internet era, but you have this junior college baseball program that was being played in this community park. And all you knew was that, there were endless major league players that were coming out of this. And that every year you would turn on, ESPN to watch the College World Series, and half the teams would have multiple players from Sacramento City College. And, if you grew up in Sacramento loving baseball during that time, we all wanted to go to Sac City. Division I baseball hadn't really exploded on the West Coast, so there weren't a lot of people getting scholarships out of high school. The showcase environment, the area code games hadn't even been invented at that point in time. So it was just this, and I still use this word, I don't use it lightly, but it was like this magical place where, people were going to play baseball at LSU and at Miami, and UCLA and Texas, and all these great baseball programs around the country, and you had big leaguers there, and you'd be, our fall inter-squad games would involve major league players that had just come home and getting ready for winter ball. So it was an amazing environment, and there was the perfect storm of things that allowed it to happen, through kind of the 70s and 80s, and really it's still going. It's still one of the top community college programs in America right now. It's a really wonderful story.
Well, and you're part of the reason it is one of the great community college programs right now, because you were the head coach there. You were the head coach there for a while now, and you won some championships. So, when you were there, I mean, Was that your dream job at that point?
It was. And, I think wherever I've coached, it's always been, I've always felt a tremendous obligation to the people I work with and the players that I'm coaching. And, it was a great job. I was coaching really good players. It allowed me to go out and coach in the summer, whether it was Cape Cod or the Northwoods League or in Alaska, and allowed me to teach sports psychology in an academic setting. So it was great. And I'm very grateful for all those times and experiences. And as I was doing that and Jerry was managing the Nuts, I would come down. I got to spend a lot of time around the ballpark and throw BP and hit fungos and get to know those players as well, which served me well, when I eventually became to work for the Rockies. So my history with Modesto goes way back, long before I got into professional baseball.
Well, you got into professional baseball with the Rockies as their peak performance coach. Would you have gotten in with the Rockies and into professional baseball if you hadn't coached Chris Dowd with the Lacrosse Loggers?
Probably not. And I don't make any bones about you got to be in the right place at the right time, and then hopefully you're prepared to take advantage of an opportunity that presents itself. But I was managing the Northwoods League that obviously you were there too for parts of that. And Jerry Weinstein called me one year and he said, "Hey, Chris O'Dowd, Dan's son, needs a place to play next year." And Chris was a really good player. I mean, he played up to AAA. And so, we put him on the team, and he had a tremendous season for us that year. And that's how I got to meet Dan and kind of build that relationship. And, and then the following year I had Tyler Service on the team, which was that one was just more of a kind of a random coincidence. Scott is from Lacrosse. So those two connections are really what got me into professional baseball and kind of began the process that's going now.
Yeah, let's talk about that process a little bit. It was interesting talking to Pete Woodworth about his time playing for you in the Northwoods League. And, he was saying, even in 08 and 09, that he could see the process developing that we now see throughout the Mariners minor league organization. So as you were developing your coaching philosophy and your process, what was the spark? What was the first time you started to think about it?
About developing my process?
Yeah.
Oh, early. I always knew that I was going to be a coach. And even when I was a player, I was more of a coach than I actually was a player. I was an org guy in colleges, which colleges generally don't have org guys. But I was doing far more coaching than I was playing. And I knew the whole time I was going to be a teacher. And so while most of my friends were still playing professional baseball or getting into the big leagues, I had a real head start on learning how to coach. And I attacked coaching the way that most people attack playing, which was, I looked at the individual skills needed to be a good coach. And I went to work on acquiring those skills for myself. And so the process has been in creation for quite a while, but it's always been founded on human behavior and psychology, and then kind of morphing into performance psychology. And that was always going to be the center of my universe as a coach.
Did you find any pushback early on in your coaching career as you were starting to present these things to people? Because that wasn't very prevalent in the conversation of baseball at the time.
It was not. And I think the pushback was minimal because I've always been somebody who's taken a lot of time to prepare, and I'm not going to bring something to players or staff until I'm really ready to do it. And I've already poked the holes in it. I've already asked the tough questions that I know are going to come. And so the pushback has been minimal. And anytime you can get with a player, it's kind of like anybody, you learn your verbiage, you learn your key questions, you learn how to sell it. And players, they inherently know this game is mental. They understand it. They're not able to articulate it well enough but you're able to kind of guide them through it, and they all get to the same place because they know it in their heart, because they know what it's like. They've all stood on the field and known that they were going to be successful, and they've all stood on the field and know that they had no chance, and everything in between. And every hitter has been in the box and understood what it looked like for the ball to appear to be moving really slowly and the ball looks big. And they know what it looks like when they can't even see it. So they've all experienced all of these different things, and they've done it long enough to know that if it was physical, everybody'd be great. Because you've been there, you've been around all these teams. Look how hard everybody practices. Every team does. But yet that practice doesn't always translate into performance, because there's that bridge that has to happen. And that bridge is the mental skill. So I really haven't had a lot of pushback, but again, like you have to understand that what's happening now was really happening in my head in the late 80s. And so this has been 30 years of simplifying and crafting and improving the process so that's more deliverable and it's easier for players to wrap their arms around, and staff as well.
So do you feel like you've been more focused on making it more deliverable, or focused on expanding the skill set that you need in order to get this? I mean, how long have you felt like this is a product that works and I just need to find a way to convey it to people in an effective way?
Yeah. It's a great question, Keaton. The answer is, what I think has been a lot of evolution when I go back and I look at things I wrote in the early 90s or practice plans that I created in the early 90s, it hasn't changed as much as I thought. And really the foundations of what we're doing with the Mariners have been things that have been kind of in place for going on 30 years now, in different ways and different levels. It's been tweaked. The language has changed a little bit, but you're 100% right. The focus is all on how can you simplify it and present it in a better way. The product itself isn't really changing. You know, we talk about our 15-second funnel constantly, and I can show you things from as early as 93 and 94 with kind of the origination of the 15-second funnel. But at that point, I didn't understand it well enough. The thoughts in my head weren't clear enough. What I was able to get on paper wasn't painting a rich, vivid picture in the athlete's mind fast enough. So that's where the evolution has continued, and it continues today. You know, if it's 2 pages, I want to get it into 1 page, and when it's 1 page, I want to get it into 2 paragraphs. You know, and if it's 2 sentences, I want to turn it into a symbol. You know, how can you continually reduce and simplify without losing substance and meaning, so that the athlete can take it and absorb it and do it quicker and take it into his own game. And that's really where the magic is.
So at some point then we're going to be able to see you just put your entire baseball philosophy in 1 tweet?
That would be a challenge. And it's funny, like, obviously, you know, the Twitter thing is it's a double-edged sword there, but I love Twitter, and I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of people. I appreciate the ability to put together a tweet that has impact, and it's teaching us all to simplify. It's teaching us all how to get rid of words, how to get rid of extra, you know, because you only have so many, so you can't waste them. Every word has to mean something. It has to bring value. It has to spark something in somebody. And, you know, the great thing about Twitter is you control it. So if you look at my Twitter feed, it's all, you know, baseball and leadership and management and communication and relationship building. And I love it. So it's been a great medium for all of us, really, that use it in the right way.
I want to go step back to the Northwoods League. You know, you were running that team like a professional team, showing the way a minor league team runs. You're there at 1 or 2 o'clock. You're running through all the stuff. Did you have any pushback at that point too? I mean, was anybody like, "Hey, what are you doing? This is supposed to be vacation"?
Yeah, there was some pushback, and you know, I did my best and it really, the Northwoods League to me was a chance for me to get uncomfortable and to get into this environment that was going to be as close to professional baseball as I could at the time. And I wanted to find out if I could do what I believe and what I do in that setting. And so I was very, all of the players who came, they were coming from college programs where my friends were their head coaches. And I was very clear early on of like, this is not summer baseball. And in fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do summer baseball better than it's ever been done. And you're going to be let down when you have to go back to UCLA, or you have to go back to Miami, or you have to go back to Long Beach State. And that I really wanted to flip the dynamic so that they'd go back to their schools and look at school as being, I got to go back to school to get ready for my next summer in lacrosse. And those were the goals I had for myself, to create something that was so great for those players, and to really prove that you can develop and win at the same time. So while there was some pushback, I felt okay with it because they were all prepared well ahead of time of what the days were going to be about and what our lifestyle was going to be like. I can't say that it worked for everybody. There were some players that decided to go home. But I'm really proud of our retention rate, and that most of the players stayed. And one of the reasons that we were able to win is because our players didn't go home, because they were really invested in what we were doing. And, the little bit of pushback, I won't give you the story, but maybe someday you can reach out to Pete Woodworth, because he can give you a good story about one of his buddies that pushed back but ended up staying. So it all ended up well.
Well, let's talk about Pete, because he was on that team for not 1, but 2 years as well. And he talked a lot about how impactful those 2 seasons were from him. What was Pete like as a player under you during his time in lacrosse?
Pete, like a lot of people, that he undersells his ability. He was a really good college pitcher. I believe he still has like the career record for wins at Florida Gulf Coast. So when you talk to him, he'd make you think that, he was the 13th pitcher on a 13-man staff, when in fact he was a very well-accomplished starting pitcher. And he was great for us, and he took the ball and he went out and he competed every night. He was completely invested in his own development and his own career, as well as his teammates. So he was kind of that perfect guy of, this is a really reliable performer, but he's also an amazing clubhouse guy. And I say clubhouse lightly because we didn't have a clubhouse. Our clubhouse was, the stands out and down the left field line. But he made me better as a coach. He challenged me. I challenged him. But I knew instantly that this is a future coach. And I was really excited when we were able to hire him here. I actually tried to hire him to help me coach in lacrosse. And instead he ended up signing and getting a chance to go play with the Rays. So, but again, he's just another one of these, and we have so many of these players, so many of these coaches in our program, that it just starts with they're really good people, and they care about the kids that they're coaching, and they take it upon themselves to continuously get better at what they do, because they know when they get better as a coach, it's going to cascade down to make the players better and give the players a better chance to live their dream. And Pete does that as well as anybody.
So what was the moment you found out that he was going to be named the Mariners pitching coach for this year?
It's a good question. I would assume at some point, towards, the end of the year type of thing. And I really don't remember an exact moment of when I knew for sure, or I do remember a conversation with Pete when he called me and was like, is this really happening? And I said, yeah, it's really happening. And, again, it goes back, all of us, there is so much luck and randomness involved in what we do, whether it's, the ground ball that you hit that goes through the hole and you become the hero, or the line drive that you smash that gets caught and everybody forgets about it. Pete was in a spot where he was in Double-A this year with us. and he had a huge bulk of pitchers that really figure into our plan moving forward at the big league level. He bonded very well with them. He connected well with them, and they all pitched extremely well. And so whether it's a Sheffield or a Dunn or a Gilbert, a Gerber, a Delaplane, an Art Warren, and I can go on and on, a Jack Anderson, they all have really good relationships with Pete, and Pete knows those guys inside and out. So, Pete found himself in a very fortunate situation in that place and time in Double-A this year with those pitchers, and he performed. He did great with it.
So that leads me to a question I've had a chance to ask a lot of the guys. How much developmental value do you think there is in moving a core group of guys together up the minor league ladder?
There's tremendous value in it, and sometimes it gets a little misinterpreted that, yes, there's value, but you really can't manipulate it. You're not going to hold a player back. Just so, in case in point, like a Jake Fraley last year, who was, the best performer in the Texas League. We moved him out of that group. You can't rush players to get into a group, and you can't hold them back to keep them in a group. So it's a little bit of some random luck that occurs when you get a pocket of players who allow it to happen. But when it does happen, it's very valuable. And that group that has kind of moved through together from Clinton, going back to the Mitch Canham days, I believe they set the all-time record for the most wins in Clinton.
Yep.
A bulk of them won a Cal League championship. Then they got deep into the Texas League playoffs. And then you're adding in, like a Jared Kelnick, and you draft a Logan Gilbert. So there is a really nice pocket of players that have really gotten to know each other really well. And that is valuable because now, they're out competing at the highest level of the game, hopefully at the major league level. And they're doing it with people that they really care about and have developed some real authentic relationship and love for one another. And that matters.
Last year, the Cal Raleigh run that he had in the second half was just incredible to watch live and in person from our perspective.
Yeah.
What was it like just watching him hit a home run seemingly every day for a 6-week stretch?
Yeah. Wasn't that amazing? It's unique, and you have these, and to be honest with you, I don't remember a run of a minor league player like that. And I'm sure there is, and it's just not coming to me. But yeah, I mean, it kind of became the Cal Raleigh show a bit, throughout the organization. And, I can remember a person like myself feeling like, God, do I want to go into Modesto and maybe say the wrong thing or just let it be right now, It was amazing to watch. And, but I think, and you hit on a really good point, when you get into a stretch like this as a player, whether it's a position player or pitcher, we always want to call it, it was a hot streak. He was on fire. And I really don't believe that. I believe he was behaving in certain ways that allowed these results to happen. And I think you're devaluing Cal as a player by making it sound like it was just he was hot. No, he was really prepared, and he was in the right frame of mind, and he played up to his ability. I think those streaks are really just kind of glimpses into your true ability level. And we all know how we feel about Cal. He's an outstanding player. We think he's going to be a great big leaguer for us. But I don't want his career defined by a 6-week stretch. And but it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad he was able to enjoy it.
Yeah, well, and what you said speaks a lot to what he was saying about that stretch. When I just talked to him during this shutdown too, is he said it was a mental adjustment of being ready to hit, which Denny Hocking had told him. He was like, "Oh, this is great. I don't have to think about my swing." And then on top of that, it was the same drills every day that were new drills that came from Denny, and that was it. And he just did those drills every day. He wasn't thinking about his swing. He was thinking about getting ready to hit, and that was it. And then before you know it, he was gone into Arkansas.
Yeah. And that's usually how it works. And, adjustments are usually very small. They're very simple. And oftentimes they're not new adjustments. It's recommitting to something that you've kind of gotten away from over time because of the wear and tear of the season and the schedule. And, we say this a lot. Coaching is way more about reminding than it is about teaching new things. So.
Final topic I want to hit here with you is the 2017 championship team. It was the first year where the Nuts were partnered with the Seattle Mariners. You said in that opening press conference before the year that we want to win and develop players, which is something you've talked about for years. What do you remember about following that 2017 Modesto Nuts team through their run to the championship?
Not a lot. It's kind of a blur. I remember the players and obviously Mitch Canham managing that team, and we all know what a special person Mitch is and how fortunate we were to have him in our organization and so forth. But I remember the excitement building. I was there, through that playoff run. And I just remember the genuine excitement in that ballpark and kind of the build up and getting that last out. I filmed it on my phone and just being really excited for those players and for those staff members, because you understand it, how hard a minor league season is. And, at the end of it, there's going to be one winner. And I was glad that our kids got to enjoy that and they got to celebrate that together, and really happy for the coaching staff. But, winning is important. You're trying to teach kids how to win. You're trying to teach people how to be selfless players that play for something bigger than themselves. And you just can't expect them to do that all of a sudden in Seattle. So, really starting with that group, they set the tone for really all of our teams in Modesto have been competitive. Whether it's we get eliminated on the last day of the season or, the last week, we've made it interesting, and we feel really strongly about that commitment to winning a baseball game, to doing the right thing in the community, and to really honor our obligation to be good partners with our affiliates, and our players understand that as well.
Sorry, there's one other question I had to ask you here too about just the quadruple call-up at the end of our Arkansas season last season. 4 guys getting called up at the same time: Justin Dunn, Donovan Walton, Kyle Lewis, and Art Warren. 3 of those guys were Nuts alums, and had a chance to have a lot of those guys tell the story from their perspective in that clubhouse. Now, you weren't in the clubhouse for that, but what was your perspective of being able to tell that Travelers staff that, hey, you're going to get the opportunity to give not 1 but 4 guys the call to the big leagues?
Yeah, and that was a great situation. I was with the team, and I had kind of made that decision that I was going to disappear and let the staff have that moment. And I regret it a little bit because I wish I would have been there, because those kids are just amazing people, right? And I can remember, honestly, in spring training this year, talking with Jared Kelnick, and somebody asked him his favorite moment as a professional. And he said, being in that clubhouse after we lost and being right next to those guys when they were told they were going to the big leagues. And those are amazing moments. And especially when you're talking about that group of people. I mean, those are amazing kids who are also great players. So, I sat with Caesar, and I explained to him what was going to happen. And I said, this is your thing. This is kind of your moment too. This is why you do it. You figure out how you want to do it, and you make it your own. So how he kind of came up with how he did it was his thing. But it was a great moment for Caesar and for that staff to get to be able to do that for those kids. And I know that there were a lot of people that were crying in that clubhouse during that moment, and just so proud of those kids, but the other guys in the clubhouse too, because I think there's a lot of other guys in the clubhouse that will eventually get to have that conversation as well.
I appreciate you said crying, because the only thing everybody says to me is they got teary-eyed, which apparently is code for crying.
It's man baseball macho code for I'm sobbing.
Yeah, you can just say you're crying, guys. It's fine.
Exactly. See, you're picking up on all these little code words here. So.
Well, I better. I got 3 hours to use them all every night when baseball's back. So
Exactly.
Well, Andy, really appreciate the time. Really appreciate the insight into kind of the growth of the process and the things we're seeing. I mean, we talk about it all the time on the air in the game, so it's fun to hear it right from you and how it's kind of grown into what we're seeing every day throughout the minor leagues. So really appreciate the time. Stay safe, and can't wait for whenever baseball returns.
Yeah, appreciate you and appreciate all the work you do. And again, this reminds you that, what you're doing is helping a lot of people, and you're being followed by people all really across the country. But you have a lot of people that are big fans of yours in Seattle, and we appreciate everything you do for all of us.
Yeah,
so,
you bet. Thank
you.
All right, Andy. Have a great day.
You too.
John Thurman Field.